Welcome to the Real ResQ podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast. This episode of the Real ResQ is being sponsored by Brice Eastern. They dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Brice Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at brice-eastern.com. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Welcome back. The through flight is done. We are fueled up and ready to go for part 2. So let's launch it.
Yeah, God, they're coming back to me, man. This is interesting.
That's what happens. People come on here and all of a sudden, man, there was this one time, and then they just keep going. And I just listen because I freaking love them.
So the news story that I was involved in, that our crew was involved in, the Associated Press picked it up and it went international. It was a rainy day in the basin, and a lot of times when it's raining hard, the clouds will just hang on the mountains. So we can't fly in the mountains. If we get a call up there, we'll try to fight our way up to the canyons if we can do safely. But a lot of times we end up staged in East LA at our main SEB headquarters. And a call came out of there were a couple people trapped on an island on some kind of structure. And it was on the San Gabriel River, which was, gets engorged with the rain. And they were trying to do a swift water rescue. County Fire couldn't get to them. Their East End helicopter couldn't get there because of the clouds. And we made the decision to try to get out there if we could. So we're flying very low over, East LA and Whittier, all these, towns. Just taking clear pocket to clear pocket. And we get to the call, and there's, fire trucks everywhere. And there's an island that's being flooded. And there's this 2-story structure that some homeless people have created. And it's actually genius. They would take a little boat to their little safe structure. And there was 2 women there, and they were trapped and basically surrounded by rapids, and they were on the 2nd story of this little structure. So I was the rear medic, and again, the situation where there were wires, it was a really low hoist. I get over, I go down. First female, I get her in the horse collar, get her up the helicopter. I go down for the second, and the lady says she's not leaving without her dogs. And I look, and she has probably a 3-foot by 3-foot box, 3 adult Chihuahua mixes, and 5 little puppies,
Oh God!
She's refusing to leave, and I'm like, okay, look, I promise, I'll get the dogs. I promise. She says, okay. So we get up. I get up to the helicopter with her. And then the crew's getting ready to take everyone to shore. And I'm like, hang on. And I was working with a guy, my front medic was Tracy River. And I'm like, Tracy, grab your SWAT stuff. And we would keep our SWAT stuff in the helicopter in these big nylon bags. Emptied out his SWAT stuff. And I told him what was up. And I went down. One of the adult dogs took off. Still hope he made it. I don't know. But I grabbed the other 2 adult dogs, the 5 puppies. I put them in this bag. Of course, there's news cameras watching this, and we were after the fact, we were listening to the experts' commentary on what we were doing, and they were just making stuff up. They had no idea what was going on. So I get the puppies up in the helicopter. We land. Helicopter shuts down, and I have this bag of little puppies, and I tell the gal, I said the one dog ran off. I go, but I have the other 2 and the 5 puppies. And she looks at me and she says, 5 puppies, there's 6. And I was, oh. So I gather the crew up, and the weather's getting a little worse. And I go, hey, there's one more puppy apparently. Are you guys okay doing one more evolution? And the PIC was a pilot named Mike Granick, and he's our most senior pilot, fantastic pilot. Again, I can't talk enough about those guys. And he was like, yeah, we're good. So we go out, and I go down there and I dig through the box, and sure as heck, under the blanket was this little puppy. Put him in the bag, get him up. We land. We take pictures with the puppies. By the time we get back to our headquarters, our captain at the time, who's the guy that loves our social media stuff, and he's done a tremendous amount for the Bureau, is like, hey, you guys, news vans are coming. Stay on the pad. And they do this multi-station story about saving puppies, and no one even mentions the 2 women. And quite frankly, people could care less. But the fact that we rescued these puppies, I mean, story went international. I remember being interviewed on the phone, this woman from the Associated Press, and she's, asking me, and there's really not much to say about this call. We grabbed some puppies, and she's asking me, well, were the puppies cute? And I was like, God, ma'am, I work with a SWAT team. I'm not going to tell you that the puppies were cute and have that end up in an article or something. They were puppies, do the math. But it was funny.
Of course they were cute. What are you thinking?
And like, if you Google my name, you will still find pictures of me holding particularly the one little last dog, the little William Defoe from Platoon. As the helicopter's leaving him, he was probably looking up at us. And
oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, but anytime we've had animal calls, those always blow up on the news. It's funny. You can save people's lives, and people really don't care. But if you have footage of saving an animal or something, it's that's going to go around the world.
Oh yeah, mind blowing.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
That's awesome. Oh man, I'm glad you shared it.
Good. All right, but this is like therapy for me.
I'm in, dude.
This is
you know what? Does the color yellow make you feel bad?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm not in love with my mom. So there's a few frequent flyer locations we have in the mountains where we'll get repeated calls. And there's this place called Hermit Falls, and it's actually part of Chantry Flats, where we had that one story I talked about earlier. And it's a kind of a swimming hole. It's really close to the city, so you get a lot of people jumping off the rocks into different levels of water depending on the time of year and conditions. And I mean, it's actually just been, there was a major fire in those mountains probably a couple years ago now, so that trail's been closed. But prior to that, we would average like at least one death a year, and then just a bunch of accidents. People go there, they drink and smoke, and then start jumping off the rocks. But we know this canyon very well, and we know when we go there exactly where that bird is going to be positioned, because there's really only one place to pick up patients from, because it's so tight. And I was working, the primary medic this day was a guy named Dave Carver. Great guy, great medic. and it was a unknown injury. And there's a swimming hole, and then there's this chute that has kind of a ledge. It goes up 20 feet, has a ledge, goes up 20 feet to a tree. And then there's this, depending on the year and who does it, there's usually some form of rope that goes down that 40-foot chute, and people will jump in and then climb up that rope. And I mean, there's knots in it. I mean, it looks just hairy. So unknown injury, Dave gets dropped off, calls me down, asks for some tools, rope bag, backboard, and I'm trying to figure out what we have going on. And it was a like 18, 19-year-old girl, probably one of the toughest patients I've ever seen. She was at the top of the chute on the rope, lost grip of the rope, slid down, hit that ledge, and both of her feet went out, and she ended up with bilateral open dislocation of essentially her tip. So like her bone is sticking out of her ankle where her feet should be.
Ouch. Yeah.
And yeah, it was gnarly. I mean, not life threatening because she wasn't losing a massive amount of blood.
Yeah.
But it was one of those situations where, like I said earlier, you know, the helicopter isn't a hammer and every call is not a nail. There was no way, based on the trees and where she was, there was no way to get her out from that position using the helicopter. So we had to rig her on the backboard. Dave was doing more of the patient care. I went above to the tree, built a quick lowering system. We were able to lower her down and then get her out to that rock, essentially in the middle of the water, and then phantom litter or Bowman bag her up. I don't remember which one, but I mean, the amazing thing was this girl was, again, 18, 19, and as tough as they've come. And I mean, I've had guys on motorcycles with almost no injuries that were just, you know, colossal wussies. But just one of those calls for me that, and I would always go over this with, you know, new guys. It just illustrated the need to keep all those skills up, the ones I talked about, you know, I mean, the diving, the shooting, the helicopter stuff, the land-based stuff, your knots, your rope rescue stuff, because you never know when you're gonna, you know, need them. So yeah, that's that.
Look at Brice. It's freaking ridiculous. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
no,
Did you
it's,
set her up in like a full backboard and then lower her down in the backboard? And
yeah.
do you guys use a rigid litter, or do you have like a pet bag or
No,
bag?
so we always, with the old H3, they used a rigid litter. They had this beautiful like titanium basket litter. But when they transitioned to the Super Puma, a couple things. They couldn't use it. They couldn't get that into the helicopter without damaging the helicopter. And then the other crazy thing is they would never tagline with the H3, and they never had an issue with patients spinning. It never happened. And then also, oddly, static electricity wasn't an issue with the H3. And then they get this Super Puma, and they were first just testing it and trying to figure it out. And they were, you know, going up, and this was just not even using a patient, just using each other, just testing things. And I mean, there was one scene that looked like that, you know, that horrible Arizona call that we've all seen video footage of, that where it was that with the medic hanging off the side of it, spinning when they were doing their testing, and they figured out that, oh, we have to tagline everything. I don't know what it was about the H3 that didn't cause that. And then the other issue was, so I worked just a few shifts with the H3 before we transitioned over, and we never used like a static dissipator. You would just hit the hook once and you'd be fine. Well, the first time I hit the hook on that Puma,
you get lit up.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? And it was And we didn't
Oh,
even
that's
know
great.
what static dissipators were. And I'm talking about guys that have been in the helicopter rescue business for 10, 15 years. But
Discharge
learned,
cable, 10 feet, all
learned,
rubber, minus the hook that goes, or the spot that goes to the hook, and the
yep,
last like foot or so, which is exposed, touches the
learned,
ground.
learned very, very quick. And even with that, there was times where
Don't get
on
lit.
wall rescues, like you could be,
No.
if you were on a wall and that dissipator would be bouncing, you would be getting,
Hoo.
zapped a
Yeah.
little bit,
Hoo,
give or
ha,
take.
ha,
Yep.
hoo, ha, ha. I love it. Hit me again.
Yeah, but there were
Oh
several
my
times
gosh.
where we had to go to a land-based situation. There was tragic call where a Cessna burned into the side of what's called Brown Mountain on the Front Range, and because of the weather conditions, we couldn't get to the helicopter. We couldn't get to the crash site all day, and finally the clouds lifted enough to get there. I was there with a partner, Tom Mayberry, and I had transitioned at that point to a bump helmet with the hearing protection integrated radio ICS, which fantastic tool, because prior to that, what we used when I first got there was flight helmets, which are great if you're in a helicopter crash, but when you're on the side of a mountain trying to assess a patient with a flight
Terrible.
helmet on, it's impossible. So the flight
Yeah.
helmet would come off, you'd hook it, and you would deal with your patient. So the bump helmet,
Yeah.
fantastic tool for the kind of stuff we do.
Oh, I'm all
Now,
about it. It's
when I
just
was,
for the record, like I am totally with you. I love my flight helmet being in the air,
yep,
being on the ground, or even on the hook. So I specifically use a Team Wendy helmet. I absolutely love it. The cups, they pop in, they pull out, and
yep,
I also have a headset underneath, but it's way better than.
yeah,
And
no,
the
I
other
mean
thing
you
about
can,
it is when you get the dirt and debris that gets into your visor and all into the parts, then you got to take the whole helmet apart and clean it out.
yeah,
Your bump helmet is the way to go.
yeah.
Love it.
When I crew chief, I would always use my flight helmet
Yeah.
with the whole mandible shield. It was just, in my opinion, the best tool for that job. But as a medic, the bump helmet was great. So we get lowered down to the crash site, and the pilot had been ejected. I mean, hit nose first, ejected, and it was really steep. We were tied off. It was really hairy. We got him to a ledge, and this is one of those things where with a body you have to contact the coroner, and the coroner being the coroner will sometimes be like, well, we want to come out to the scene, and that's when you'd be like, you'd be crew chiefing. You'd be like, yeah, let me explain to you what this scene is. You would explain it, and they're like, yeah, just document it with some pictures and video, please. No problem.
Gotcha.
So we document what we can. Um, we get the decedent packaged up, and when the helicopter comes in to get us out of there, the clouds have been slowly coming down, and helicopter came in. I remember looking at Dave Carver, who's crew chiefing on this one, and you could see the clouds just being pulled down through the main rotor, because they are like right at the bottom of the cloud, and then helicopter starts to disappear, and you just see it just fly off down the canyon. We're losing light, and the clouds are getting lower. They get us on the radio, and they just say, hey, there's no way we can get to you. So we have our rope bag, and we start figuring out anchors. We made the decision. The patient was packaged up to leave the patient, or not patient. He was, like you just said, he was decedent. And Tom and I rappelled about 400 feet in total, and probably about 6
Holy
different rappels.
shit.
Just figuring out, making up anchors, figuring it out. And the funny thing was, Tom was newer at this point, and then he turned out to be like, so at the detail, guys, just, it's human nature. You have a tendency to gravitate toward different disciplines. Like for me, it was the diving a little more. Tom, it was the rope stuff, and like now he's a trad lead climber, total rope stud. at this point, he was newer. Me being a senior guy, I was figuring out the anchors, and then we had 2 ropes. I would rappel down, and as he was rappelling, I would run to the next position to try to rappel down. And the funny thing is poor Tom had a flight helmet on, and I'm worried about him, and I keep yelling, hey, Tom, are you okay? Tom, are you okay? And he can't hear a gosh dang, thing with that flight helmet. And he was getting so pissed at me. I remember at one point he finally goes, yes, I'm fine. Long story short, and I know you don't like long story short.
No, man, make it long story long. This is what I'm here for.
We rappelled down, about 400 feet. Helicopter slid in, got us out of there, so we didn't have to spend the night on the mountain, which has happened before. And then ended up recovering the decedent the next day. But yeah, so it's just the beauty of the job is you have an opportunity to use all these disciplines that we train in. And the downside, if there is one for me personally, has always been, when I meet somebody, I'm at a party and they say, what do you do? And it's primarily, depending on where I am, what I'm doing, either deputy sheriff or paramedic. And then it's a situation where you're really going to have a conversation with someone. It's almost hard to explain the job now as of 14 days ago that I did. At a certain point, it just sounds like bullshit, because I'm flying a helicopter, but I'm attached to the SWAT team, and I dive and I do this deep diving stuff, and we do rope rescue. It's just, but like I inferred before, I mean, what a gift to be able to do it, and very hard to give up. With my retirement, 33 years, it was time. And my wife, we've been married almost 20 years, so she's never known me without the SWAT pager or without, going in on days off, without, she knew with the ESD side, when my phone started blowing up on a weekend when we were somewhere, it usually meant, 9 out of 10 times, it was some kind of dive operation that I was going to be involved in, the next day. Wow. So yeah, to kind of put a period on it, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, question. You actually had there was a picture you sent with a guy kind of all, I'm going to call him dirty. And I think you were in your helmet and it was like a thumbs up or high five. Yeah. That one. Like that was the horns. Yeah. Is it? What was that?
That was Stoner Dave. That was Stoner Dave. Stoner Dave.
The fact that you remember that phrase with him is awesome.
I love the fact that that was a selfie I took right after we rescued him. And that picture made it on the news, which just delighted me to no end. Not a tremendous tricky call, but a good one. He was kind of on the front range, but he was hiking. He got lost. The particular time of year, it's the time of year where the clouds like to sit right on top of the mountains. So it was a situation where he was basically in a cloud, lost direction, phone goes dead. And us, in conjunction with all the search and rescue ground teams that I mentioned, those guys before, who quite frankly are the real heroes, start searching for him. We know he has limited food, limited water. His people did say that he did like to smoke weed, so we were pretty sure he was going to have a lighter with him, which probably ultimately served him well. A lot of times on these big searches, we'll get different county search and rescues from surrounding counties, and with the aircraft, the land-based search and rescue guys do a really good job of charting and figuring out which areas have been searched. And we'll spend a lot of time inserting teams. They'll search areas. We'll pull them out, and then we also kind of stay in the area as support for them. particularly like on this one, because I mean it was a treacherous area where this guy was, but he was missing for 5 days, and honestly, with all the canyons and wet and dry waterfalls in that area, by day 5, and I think we started the search, we had our days off, and when we came back on, we were still searching for him. It was pivoting to that, there's a psychological point of this search where you start, and I think it's human nature, you start thinking from rescue to recovery, and honestly, 5 days, particularly based on, it was so treacherous where he was. I was really thinking, you're looking for a body at the bottom of waterfalls. And we had these 2 canyons to search. Our one, the PIC, his name is Rich Thompson, just ice water in his veins. We're going up this canyon fairly low, and we're searching, and he's just on the ice desk, goes, "Hey, there's a guy with a backpack, and he's waving at us." And we are make no mistake, there's no trails, there's no roads, there's nothing near us. We are in the middle of the San Gabriel Mountains. And it was like, holy S, like that has to be him. And go down. I was crew chiefing. Guy named Shane Secord, great medic, goes down, confirms that it's him. And I mean, he's, other than being dirty and hungry, he's fine. I mean, it was completely remarkable. And we land, and he tells us that he ran out of food day 1, and he ran out of weed that morning. So I think that's when things got critical for him. And hey, man, like I'm not judging. It's legal in California. He was just awesome, and I took that selfie with him, and I've seen that picture pop up in a few places, and it's it was that I don't know. There's just times where, again, it's so selfishly satisfying, but finding someone after 5 days when you were really thinking, ooh, there's a good chance this guy's going to be dead, if we find him at all, that feels, pretty good. So yeah, stoner game.
I love the picture too. It's freaking hilarious.
Yeah. I have a few I have a few pictures like that. That was always, for whatever reason, that was always kind of my thing.
Yeah. The orange.
Yeah. There was a girl.
Oh gosh.
Up Highway 39. She was kind of a cliffhanger. Not a crazy call. The people she was with, they were able to down climb. She was on like a little shelf, and I was a rear medic, so I went down to get her in the horse collar, and I'm straddling her. She was like 19 or 20 and terrified, just screaming for me, not to drop her. And I remember almost kind of being a little firm and just telling her, like, hey, I'm not going to drop you. And got the horse collar on her, up to the helicopter, get her in the bird, doors are closed, she's secure. And she just looked just still terrified. And she had her phone, and I grabbed her phone, I told her to unlock it, and I hit the little selfie button, and I take a picture with her, and I hand it to her, and she kind of gave a little giggle, and it was really cool. And then
it was one of those giggles like, I just got saved, but I'm still traumatized.
Yeah, it was funny. And I mean, she's completely uninjured. We go to the LZ, and there's one of the deputies with the mountain car there waiting for her. And I drop her off, and I kind of get her to the quiet environment, and I make sure she's fine. I mean, completely uninjured. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and she said, because I was getting ready to walk back to the helicopter, and she says, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "Oh, my name's Brice." And she jumped up, Quinny, and she gave me a hug. And I've described it before as like the kind of hug I would get from my daughter when she was 10. You know, just a big hug. And again, you know, one of those selfish moments. And apparently she got my work email from that deputy, and she sent me a little note, and that picture, that selfie that we took, you know, thanking me and the team, and it was super nice. It was
Oh yeah,
again,
that's great.
selfishly satisfying.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider.
Yeah, and I mean, I already missed that. It was a hard decision for me personally to retire. I mean, I had the time on, and it's time, but it's I loved it so much, but you know, it's time. And I really have to thank you for this opportunity to revisit all these stories, because I don't wax on about this stuff at parties, or so thank you. Actually, thank you.
Hi,
It's
Brice,
like I
it's
said
my
before,
pleasure, man.
very, very therapeutic.
Buddy, I'm just the host. That's it. It's your story. This is your podcast. I'm just along for the ride.
And
It's freaking
really,
awesome.
I'm really happy to talk about ESD and just let people know about the detail. And I hope they look it up online and check it out, because the guys and girls that do really, really solid work. But yeah, make no mistake, it is such a gift to be able to do that job. It is such a gift.
Awesome. You know, I love what you guys do down there. And it's actually, for me, I like I said, I had no idea how much you guys actually do. This is very enlightening for me too. And I'm hoping that maybe we can keep in touch and I can get down there and you guys show me the ropes a little bit. Well, now that you're retired, I gotta call somebody else. But I mean, geez.
I still got my finger in the mix, and
okay.
Yeah,
are you gonna be that guy, Brice? Are you gonna be that guy? Like,
no, no, man, no. Make no mistake.
I'm just kidding. It's cool.
No,
cool.
It's funny you say that, because we would very jokingly and kindly, I'm trying to word this, joke about some of the old retired guys, but I mean, there are literally a number of older medics who their wish was to have their ashes spread up in the mountains at Barley Flats.
Oh wow.
You know, it has that kind of impact, and I ultimately I can understand it, and maybe I'm starting to understand it more now that, you know, it's in my rearview mirror. And then the one thing I didn't hit on is Barley Flats, our rescue base, is it's this amazing, beautiful little spot in the mountains. People really can't get up there. It's a decommissioned Nike missile base from the 50s.
Oh wow, cool. Okay.
Which is because there's a bunch of them in Southern California from the Cold War, and it's just truly a beautiful spot. So I mean, and it sits, I think, about 5,200 feet up in the pine forests, and so, you know, in between calls, you could literally be sitting outside, you know, watching the deer and fox and whatever animals. And you know, I grew up an outdoor guy, actually hiking and camping and doing a lot of stuff in those mountains as a kid. So it was really, really full circle for me. But yeah, such a tremendous gift to be able to do that job.
So cool, man. I can't get enough of this. I say it all the time, but I literally cannot get enough of this. I absolutely love it. There is one more story that I really want to talk about, and I've been waiting to hold this one for last. The biggest reason behind it, first of all, you sent me a video of you saving a lady who was on the cliff. So it was a kind of a cliff rescue, and the video itself is just incredible. you actually see her. You're going to go into all this, but when you guys go on, for everybody that's listening, go on Instagram, YouTube, it'll be there. But this lady is sliding down and you literally catch her and
Yeah.
bring her to safety. Physical grip. It's amazing. So we're going to get into that. But first, she wrote you a letter and I get to read the letter. And I say this more often than not. We don't do it for the awards. We don't do it for the attaboys. I don't do it for the news articles or the magazine articles. That's not what I do this for. This right here, this means everything and goes beyond any award that I ever could have received. It's that thank you from the people you saved. So let me get into this because it's just incredible to me. It says this: Dear Brice, I've struggled to find the right words to thank you grandly enough to be commensurate with your wonderful gift to me. I have difficulty expressing my thoughts and feelings in writing. However, I truly want you to know how very much and deeply I appreciate you having saved my life in such tremendous grace. In just a few minutes on the edge of the mountain, I came to have an amazing respect for the man you are, the skills you have perfected, the career choice you have made, and the generosity with which you live your life. In this letter, my husband cites John McPhee's description of our mountains as the fastest decomposing range in the world. I will quote John Muir, who described our local mountain range as Mother Nature at her most rugged, thornily savage. It is clear to me that as you and I were tumbled around by the tumult of the wind, rock storm created by the helicopter turbulence, we both experienced a bit of the mountain's savage quality. I hope that any injuries you may have incurred that day have been healed. Your great aptitude, as well as your ability to dedicate yourself, sharpening your skills, open a wide range of career possibilities in which you would be highly successful. I am so happy that you chose to rescue people like me from a helicopter and that you were on duty when my harrowing experience took place. When the helicopter was overhead, I hugged the cliff, focusing on my breathing and staying calm and as weightless as I could be so that I could remain still. Then, for an instant, despite the deafening noise of the helicopter and the assault from the rock storm, I thought I could feel a presence. But then the feeling was gone. While I knew the rescue team must be figuring out what to do, I could not be certain that anyone was nearby on the ground. I had not seen nor heard anyone. Then, when I suddenly found myself being transported down a conveyor belt of scree with ever greater speed, knowing I was rapidly approaching a sharp drop-off, I simply thought I was passing. I accepted my fate. I had no strength, no resistance left in me. I could scarcely hope, much less trust, that anyone would be able to arrest my fall. I thought it was over. To suddenly be secured, surrounded by your arms, brought me such overwhelming comfort and relief. And you continued to give me a sense of comfortable security throughout the rescue, even though you had a hold on me as well as the unattached harness that you had hoped to use to support my weight. In addition, the helicopter team enabled us to navigate a nearly vertical wall of rock without too many close encounters with the rocks. Your team's rescue of me was truly amazing. Before we parted that day, you referred to my rescue as your closest call. My husband, however, prefers to say it was your greatest, and I think it was perfect. Never will I be able to express the full extent of my gratitude. I have thanked you more times than I can count, each and every day since January 25th. I am not even close to finishing thanking you. I will do my best to repay your wondrous gift by helping others whenever an opportunity arises. With the greatest affection. Brice, this is why I love what we do. This letter is just, It's amazing. It's so well written, and
Yeah, I would argue she has no problem putting things into words. Yeah, it's definitely a prized possession. And when I met her, she was so terribly private. I never thought I would hear from her again. And then this showed up at my work a few months later. So yeah, her name and everything is redacted because, like I said, she and her husband just beautiful people, very private, and I absolutely respect that.
well, you got to bring us back to the beginning, my friend. You're called out for what?
Uh, Called out for an unknown injury in an area called Eaton Canyon, which I talked about earlier. That was where I
Yeah.
had that first cliffhanger call. We get overhead. We don't have much patient info. It's not a tough trail, but it's just a long, winding trail up the canyon that involves a lot of water crossing. So even if we get an isolated ankle or something, we'll usually pull them out because it takes at least 4 guys with the single wheel barrel burrow thing that they use, and we'll just pull them out. So we get overhead Eaton Canyon. I go down. It's an isolated ankle injury, and treat the patient. And while I'm treating the patient, the crew chief, Joe Palomino, who I've talked about earlier, gets on the radio and goes, "Hey, we have another patient, and I'm going to lower Steve down, who was the other medic, and he's probably, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile down the trail, and there was another patient." So I come up with my patient. BLS, nothing call. There's a park we usually drop them off at, but it's just much safer than them trying to get them out of the canyon. So when I get up in the helicopter, Joe's like, "Hey, a call for cliffhanger came out," and I told him we're busy, and I told him to get another air unit on. So they had what we would call the East End, LA County bird, rolling to that. In the interim, Joe hoisted Steve and his patient. So now we have 2 patients in the helicopter, and we're flying out of the canyon. The other helicopter still has like a 14-minute ETA. So Joe made the decision. He goes, "Hey, the cliffhanger call. It was a 911 call, which got pushed to search and rescue. And there was a search and rescue team who notified us by radio, is how it happened." And
Okay.
Joe, being the crew chief, said, "Hey, let's just check out Rubio Canyon right next door. We'll put eyes on her, and we'll be able to tell the helicopter crew where she is." Because, like I told you before, there's cliffhangers and then there's cliffhangers. And if we turn the corner and there's someone on a plateau, we just be able to give a lat long for the helicopter crew to pick her up or pick them up, whatever. Well, we turn the corner, we're going down the canyon, and I look and I see this woman. She's about 60, 70 feet below the trail. It's fairly steep where she is. And then about 10, 15 below her, it goes vertical to 100, 150 foot drop down to the canyon. And she is hanging on the bushes. And I mean, it looked like, I'm not making light of it, but it looked like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. It was a cliffhanger. So Joe looked at me, I looked at Joe. We didn't even say anything. We just knew based on her where she was, and if she fell, what was going to happen to her. There was no anchors or any ability to do any kind of land-based thing. And I think we just made that mutual simultaneous decision of, let's go in and get her as quick as we can. So I just get on the edge. I grab the horse collar. There's this is on what we call the front range. So there's some major wires right above us, worst position possible. The pilots, Scotty Helbing and Todd Kasisko, I mean, 2 of our best. And I mean, I could wax on about, I call them my pilots. but our pilots, I can wax on about them, how good they are, and the stuff they do in the canyons with that big bird. I mean, I can't give them enough credit. And when we have other people, whether it's the PJs or SEALs, they always comment like how rock solid our pilots are. And that's always nice to hear. So
Awesome.
we went in under the wires, so it's a much shorter hoist than it would normally be. I knew just from working with Joe so long that he was going to get me below her, bring me up to her, get that harness around her. I'm bouncing around a little bit. I get right below her to the point where one side of that strap is unhooked because I'm going to get it around her and hook it. And the next thing I know, she's just falling towards me. And instinctively, and I mean, I was in the perfect position to do this. I've been blessed with oddly long arms and long legs. And I just grabbed her, got my legs around her. No harness on her or anything. And I have my heels are hooked. And then Joe starts bringing me up. And I can't get to my radio to transmit anything to him. And my initial fear is that I was afraid he didn't realize she wasn't secured with any kind of harness and he was going to try to bring us up to the helicopter. So as we're coming up, we come up above the trail. I motion to put me down on the trail, which he was already going to do because he was, after the fact, we talked about it, and he was well aware of what was going on. And he ends up sitting me down, no exaggeration, 3 feet next to her husband, who's on the trail. She's still in my lap. I unhook the hook, bird flies off. And I think the first thing I said was, well, let's not do that again. And
oh my gosh.
So I stand up, I start doing an assessment on her. She doesn't want anything to do with that. So we walk on a part of the trail. And just to be clear, she was, and if you find the news story on YouTube, I talked about this when I got interviewed later. She wasn't on a closed trail. She wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just a narrow part of the trail where there was a washout. 71 years old, tough, in great shape. But she didn't want, like, I really wanted to send my pack down, send the screamer suit down, get her checked out. She wanted nothing to do with that, and she wouldn't have it. So we walk down the trail. We're standing on this old cement water tank, and I mean, I checked her out, and she really, other than some scrapes, she was okay, and she just wanted to walk out the trail on her own power. Like I said, absolutely refused any medical treatment, which is her right. And she was alert and oriented. I can't kidnap someone. She gave me a big hug and called the guys in. They had dropped off the 2 patients at this point. They picked me up, and we're all in back of the helicopter, all a little bit in disbelief. We had always talked about if that could be done, if you could just hold on to a patient. I remember doing some things with some swift water training, and we tried to do it with each other, over water, and we'd always talked about it. Obviously, really bad idea, not something you want to do. But it just happened. And then the ironic thing was there was a Channel 11 newscopter right above us, which I didn't know until that guy sent the footage to one of our pilots who they knew each other. And that pilot, when we got back up to Barley Flats, our rescue base, that was when I first saw the actual footage of it. And I've seen it several times since. And it was just a perfect storm. I mean, it was lucky, but the skill of the pilots, getting under the wires and getting in there quick, Joe's skill on the hook, I'd say probably our best crew chief, to get me where I needed to be so quickly. And then the luck of me being able to hang on to her. I mean, it was a, knock on wood, that was a once of a lifetime kind of incident. And then that night, our Sheriff's Information Bureau got in touch with me, and Channel 11 wanted to come and interview me. And we do a lot of that. We've had a lot of calls that have made the news. And I always think it's good exposure for the program. And I like the people of LA County to know, what we're doing for them and what we do. So that was on the news at 10 o'clock. The next morning, I was actually working another shift with that medic and the crew chief. And we're still talking about the day before. I mean, we were still in disbelief and thinking, man, if things got wrong, we'd be having such a different conversation right now.
Oh, yeah.
And my, gosh, he's a chief now. I think he was a commander at the time, called me, and he's kind of the guy that does all our social media stuff, which is hilarious because he's like 64 and he's, tracking likes and stuff on Instagram. SEBLASD on Instagram, if anyone wants to check it out.
Nice. Nice.
And he's like, hey, make sure your class A's are good to go, because this was a Sunday. We got, Good Morning America tomorrow and this and this. And it was going to turn into this whole junket. And maybe, I don't know, a half hour later, my partner's wife calls him and says something about a helicopter crash in our area. And it was Kobe Bryant. So that was the 26th of January.
Yeah.
So yeah, our little news story, got buried with that tragedy.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, no medals, no nothing. But that letter, one of my absolute prized possessions. I mean, it really is. And I called those people the next day, in the husband's name. I won't use it, but I talked to him. I just said, hey, this is Brice Stella. I met you on the trail yesterday.
And I met you on the trail.
Yeah.
Brice, that's awesome. Classic.
I don't know if you know or not, but there was a news copter above us, and he just said, yes, we're very aware. She's not too happy. One of the neighbors told us, and she saw it. And I just explained to him that, his privacy would be respected. And because even after the fact, I did get some calls where people wanted to do, in-depth stories on it, and they wanted to, get her view of the story. And I just simply said, no, there's not interested, no can do. But yeah, that was a defining moment. And I mean, me being on the hook just happened to be where I was that day. And I mean, it wouldn't have happened without Scotty Helbing and Todd and Joe. And I mean, it was, and this decision to do it when we did it. But yeah, I certainly don't recommend it. Yeah, I think had I time to think about it, I would have been terrified.
Physical grip is no joke.
Yeah.
Freaking badass, Brice. Dude, that is sick. Can I say nice catch? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Nice.
It's funny because I have we work very closely with our ground-based search and rescue guys. Are almost all reserve deputies, all volunteer. Salt, they're hardworking, on the pager 24/7, and those are the guys that are, ground pounding. And so we have a very good relationship with them. And this one particular gentleman on the Montrose team is Mike Liam. He calls that the immaculate reception. And I'll take it. Yeah, it was a moment. And so much of what we do, I mean, none of the good stuff ever ends up on camera. All the GoPro footage is usually the mediocre calls, because the real calls, you're never thinking, oh, hey, let's get this on camera. You're just thinking it's time to go to work. So to have that filmed was pretty cool.
So cool. So cool, man.
So this was literally my last rescue on Air 5. I was working with a newer guy, Rob Springer, a guy that I helped train. He was at that point where he was going to start, being the primary medic on calls. So he had done his paramedic thing, did the thing on the helicopter. We get a call, Mount Baldy Road, possible jumper. Beyond that, no information. We get overhead. There's a huge turnout. There's a couple civilian vehicles, about 10 fire vehicles. And we see about 100, 150 feet down, there's some people, and there's a couple Forest Service guys that had down climbed to the people. Again, no idea what happened. So the decision is made to send Rob down as the primary medic, capable guy, and it was just, his time. And he goes down, gets on the radio, tells us what's up, ties off the woman. I guess it was pretty precarious where they were. He formulates the whole plan, gives us the whole evolution, and basically, I'm going to go down, bring a screamer suit, which actually, no, he brought a couple down with him. So he got them in screamers. I went down and I picked up the first patient, completely uninjured, a guy in his pajamas. And it was the weirdest. Yeah, I know, because why not?
Because why not? Because you can't make this stuff up. That's why not.
Yeah. And so I put this guy in ICS and I'm asking him, like, what's going on? And he's kind of crying. And I'm like, is that your wife, your girlfriend? He goes, is my wife. And I go, did she jump? And he said, yes. So I don't know what happened, but it was some kind of vehicle pursuit where he's chasing his wife. She hit the turnout and she ran and she took a dive off this, pretty steep cliff. And she bounced down. So she was injured more, kind of in and out of consciousness. And Rob made the decision, got a collar on her, put her in the screamer, got her up, went through all his interventions. It's a short ride to the hospital. He did a great job. We take him to Pomona Valley Hospital, get into the trauma center. He gives report, and it was just, one of those things where it just hit everything perfectly. And I'm just sitting back watching. And I'm just like, yeah, and he steps away and then I'm watching him and I see him kind of take a couple breaths, like things are just coming to him. And then he looks at me and I just kind of gave him a nod and he nodded at me and I walked up and I just said, pardon my French, but I just said, best fucking job in the world. And he's like, yeah. Yeah. And
guys, I love it so much.
And it was like that was the last time that I hoisted out of Air 5 and was involved in a rescue and kind of, passed the torch on and it's in good hands. That's the easy part about retirement. It's in good hands.
Freaking awesome.
All right.
Brice, I've had you on here for a long time, and
Yep.
I really, really appreciate everything.
Problem.
But I'm gonna wrap it up a little bit, and what I'm gonna do is
100%.
I'd like to ask you. Well, I want to ask you one more question before we're done, and that is, you did this for 33 years, 12 years specifically as a medic on Rescue 5.
Yeah.
Advice that you would pass on to those that are following up behind you, doing the job now, or me? Hey, I'll take it too.
So I literally did a little kind of a farewell post to, people that have been following my career on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And I told a little story that I think can illustrate this and would be my best advice. And that would be in about 2000, I used to do a lot of triathlons and I did the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon. You got to swim basically from the island or a boat next to the island to the mainland. And at the time, there was a pro. His name was Chris McCormick. He was a big deal back then, Ironman champion, all this, Australian guy. And the day before the race, they have kind of a festival, and he's on the stage just talking about the race. And he said, like, hey, if you're not going to win this thing, do yourself a favor. In the middle of the swim, just stop and do a quick 360 and look around, and then continue on with your race, because you're going to see something from somewhere that very few people get to see. And I took that to heart. I remember doing it, and I remember seeing the Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz, Treasure Island, the San Francisco skyline. And I mean, it was spectacular. And a little bit later in life, I kind of adopted that as a little bit of a philosophy, and being very simply, when you're having, one of those moments, when you're in one of those places, doing one of those things, seeing one of those things, take that second, do that 360, take it in, because you might never be back there again. You might be seeing something that very few people get to see. So if I could give any advice, other than just do everything you can to be as safe as you can and keep your partner safe, because I mean, ultimately that's what it's about. But the other thing is, take that minute to do that 360 and enjoy those things you get to see that very few people can.
Brice, I love it. I absolutely love it. I cannot thank you enough for coming on, dropping some amazing stories, hitting us home with awesome advice.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's really been an honor, and I mean, I'm humbled at looking at some of the heavy hitters you've had on this podcast. And I am so far from special, but I do recognize that, man, I did get to do something special with a lot of special people. So
you have some amazing rescues. Come on, man. There's some cool stuff, man, that you have done. And I don't want to take away anything from anybody, but you've done some cool stuff. You saved a lady from falling hundreds of feet in midair as she's sliding past you. Seriously.
Yeah, I know. Got lucky on that one. Yeah.
Come on. That's pretty badass, dude. Brice, thank you. Thank you for sharing these stories with us. I can't thank you enough. When I get down to LA, I'm going to give you a call. We got to go out.
Please do.
I'd love to meet up. HAI is going to be out there this upcoming year in 2024. So if anything, we'll meet up there and we'll just.
Hey, if anything, I mean, anytime you're down toward Orange County, as soon as this little house renovation thing, you always got a place to stay.
Thank you.
100%.
Sweet. Well, I'll call you and we'll go out for a beer. And if we do it really right, I'll get down and we'll go check out the unit. So I'm all about that too.
That would be something to see, because it's, like I said, I was so lucky to be able to do it, so lucky to be able to work there. And it's really a group of special people doing a special thing. So,
Brice, it's been a blast. I'll see you when I get down there. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Now it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share, or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode, Brice Eastern. They dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Brice Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at Brice, real-eastern.com. Hey, rule number 3. A clean plane is a happy plane. Now, you might not have a plane or helicopter that you're operating out of, but this rule can still apply to you. In your car, your boat, your ambulance, your fire truck, whatever it is that you're operating out of, put pride into it. Get on the inside, vacuum it out, wipe it down, make it smell and look amazing. Then get on the outside, wash it, wax it. Then you can step back and feel proud and say, man, I make that look good.